Good night. This is E-News. I am Hugo Pratesi from Times Square, and these are the news for today. We are going to see an interesting video about the Marianas Trench. That is the deepest place in the planet.
With the deepest part 7 miles beneath the surface waves of the Pacific. To gather further evidence, 2 courageous men were about to undertake the most dangerous dive in history. They would venture into the abyss and go to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. The Marianas Trench is one of the most remote, inhospitable places on Earth.
And now the economic indicators for today in the stocks of New York. And talking about social news, Gabriel Garcia Marquez is dead. A novel born in Colombia and one of the most important writers of the planet. This is his biography.
Gabriel Garcia Marquez was born on March 6, 1927, in the town of Aracataca, Colombia. Oddly enough, some of his works are set in the fictional village called Macondo, which seems to be highly similar and maybe even inspired by Aracataca. His parents left, but he stayed behind and was raised by his maternal grandparents. At the age of 9, his grandfather died and he had to move back to live with his parents. His father, Eligio, was a conservative and had the reputation of being a womanizer. Because Gabriel grew up with his grandparents rather than his normal parents, his grandfather had a huge impact on his development. His grandfather would occasionally tell his young grandson, "You can't imagine how much a dead man weighs."
And talking about history, the Chinese Empire built the Great Wall of China. This is E-News.
We think of China as a land of rice, but this isn't really true. China is the world's largest producer of potatoes and sweet potatoes, and the second largest producer of corn. And who can imagine Szechuan cooking without hot peppers? None of these crops are from Asia and were never seen outside the Americas before Columbus. So how did they get to China? Early Spanish explorers became obsessed with gold and silver, but their ultimate goals were Chinese silk and porcelain. Since the Indian Ocean was dominated by the Portuguese, the Spanish went the other way around the world, trading with China from their colony in the Philippines. For hundreds of years, Spain shipped Chinese silks 2/3 of the way around the world, across the Pacific, through Mexico, and thence onto Europe.
In our section of present interesting, the modification of the seeds is one of most important news of the planet.
Modified foods have been around for years, but most Americans have no idea if they are eating them. The Food and Drug Administration says they don't need to be labeled, so the state of Vermont has moved forward on its own. On Thursday, Governor Peter Shumlin signed legislation making his state the first to require labeling of genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. What about the rest of the country? And does labeling matter? There's a lot of confusion about genetically modified foods and their safety. Some people feel very strongly about GMOs. Opponents, who at times have protested in the streets, say consumers have the right to know whether their food contains GMOs. The Vermont law is their first major victory. The food industry and companies that genetically engineer seeds have pushed back against the labeling laws, saying GMOs are safe and labels would be misleading. It's really polarizing, says New York University's Marion Nestle, a professor of nutrition and food studies. There's no middle ground. A look at the debate and some of the facts about genetically modified foods.
Are you ever asked your how to make olive oil? Because you will learn this process from the next video.
For the health-conscious gourmet, there's one ingredient that's sure to set the taste buds sizzling. From frying to salad dressing, olive oil is an essential in any modern kitchen. A wide variety of grades and flavours are available, but they all have one thing in common. No, it's not the green bottle it often comes in, but the olives themselves. Each type of olive has a unique taste. By combining different types, the producer can create an oil with an individual flavour. The process begins at harvest. The traditional method involves collecting olives using tiny rakes, but it's not very efficient. For a big crop like the one on this farm, an automated harvester is used instead. The machine surrounds each tree and literally shakes the olives off the branches. The fresh fruit is collected into a waiting hopper along with some leaves and twigs, but these can easily be removed later. A machine like this can collect as many olives in an hour as it would take the traditional farmer to collect in an entire day. When the harvest reaches the production plant, the fruit is washed to remove any dirt, leaves or twigs that were caught up in the collection process. The more stubborn twigs and branches that remain are filtered out using a grill which only allows the fruit to pass through. To get the best quality oil, the fruit should be pressed as soon as possible. Traditional methods mean there's a delay between harvesting and the grinding process. The original method also uses big millstones like these granite wheels to grind both fruit and the stones into a thick pulp. But modern production carefully controls two vital factors. First, the fruit is sent directly from the harvester to the grinders with as little delay as possible. And second, the fruit is ground more gently. Olives can lose flavour if the fruit is heated by the friction of grinding. The most sought-after olive oil is called cold-pressed. If the fruit pulp goes over 27 degrees, it can no longer be called this and loses value. It's time to extract the oil. In the traditional system, the pulp is layered between hemp mats. Each quantity of pulp is followed by another mat and so on, until the alternate layers look like a stack of giant pancakes. The stack is placed in a hydraulic press which literally squeezes the oils from the pulp. It's collected below and has the traditional cloudy golden colour associated with good quality olive oil. The modern method is far less aggressive but just as effective. Instead of crushing the pulp, it's spun in a centrifuge like this one. As it's spun around, the oil passes out through a fine mesh, leaving the pulp behind. The oil can then be siphoned off and stored, while the remaining pulp is collected elsewhere. It's not wasted though, it's recycled and can be used as fertilizer or animal feed. It may surprise you to know that once it's been pressed, olive oil can be tasted like wine. The experience is obviously very different, but this is one way the experts can assess the purity and flavour of their product. Pure, unfiltered oil is considered the most valuable. If the residues are filtered out in a centrifuge like this one, what emerges is considered a slightly inferior grade of oil.
Give me a lever and I will move the world. You learn that of the next video. And why emotional intelligence is important for our lives? Where is the answer in news?
Lacey Green here for D News. You've probably heard of IQ or intelligence quotient. If you haven't, you clearly haven't seen every single episode of D News. For shame. But hey, have you heard of EQ, also known as EI, which stands for emotional intelligence? It's a measure of how well we identify, control, and understand our own and other people's emotions. Multiple studies have found that when it comes to being happy and successful in your career and relationships, emotional intelligence is actually more important than your IQ. I mean, think about it. It's the extent of your street smarts, your ability to interact with others and understand yourself that gets you through your day-to-day life. Book smarts are great and all, but it's not going to do much for you if you're terribly out of touch. Only the rare evil genius can succeed this way. The good news is that the research suggests that emotional intelligence is something that anyone can learn and improve upon if they really dedicate themselves to it. So, woo science. So what makes a person emotionally intelligent? There are 5 categories of EQ. The first is self-awareness. Basically, I'm here and I understand my own brain. Sort of. Self-aware people recognize their own emotions and how they affect themselves and others. You might notice, hey, I'm being kind of a jerk today, and then figure out why. The second category is self-regulation. Now that you know why you're being a jerk, you can handle it effectively. Angry outbursts and internet flame wars would be an example of poor self-regulation / social skills, which is the third category. You might walk the walk, but can you talk the talk? Social skills include the ability to communicate effectively what you want and what you need, to build strong relationships with others, and to be a team player. The fourth category is motivation. You get knocked down, then you get up again, because they're never going to keep you down. You're the kind of lady or man who presses on and stays positive. The last category is empathy, and this one is considered the most important for career success. Empathetic people want to understand others and how they feel about things. This helps a person to provide excellent service or to understand what people around them need to do and be their best. So all this means that people with high EQs tend to fall into certain patterns. They're often great leaders because they know how to pay attention and read the needs of their team members. They know their own strengths and weaknesses and are in touch with their own emotions because they're highly self-aware. Those with a high EQ also tend to want to do good. They don't want to be the type of person that makes you facepalm at humanity. Because they're able to focus outward and not be completely distracted by their own head junk, they're a bit more mindful about what's going on around them and what others are experiencing. So, how emotionally intelligent are you? Tell me about it in the comments below, and then take the test I dropped in the description to see if you were self-aware enough to evaluate yourself accurately.
Answer in news. And this is all for today. Have a good night.